Hello and welcome to another episode of Taylor Talks Comics. Today we're going to go over the Rocketeer Deluxe, The Complete Adventures by Dave Stevens. Okay, so this was a recent reprint by IDW Publishing, and I was so excited that they finally reprinted this because this is a book that I've wanted for a really long time, but it was out of print and cost way too much on eBay. So I was glad they finally reprinted it, and I just recently finished reading it. This is my second time reading this. I think I read it digitally a couple years ago, but I just absolutely love the story. It is the comic that the movie was then based on, if you've watched the movie before. And it's just an incredible pulp story by Dave Stevens, who's the architect behind it. He does all the artwork and the writing for it. So I'm going to show off the book first before I dive into the story. So this side of the spine on the slipcase, because it is a slipcase, it's just plain red. But on the actual book itself, you can see the slipcase, and it says The Rocketeer, The Complete Adventures by Dave Stevens, IDW. The top of the slipcase is just plain red, and the bottom has just got the ISBN and the price tag. And then the back side of the slipcase is the same as the front, but without any lettering. So let's open that up. The inside of the slipcase is just plain white. Nothing to write home about there. But the book itself has a different cover. It looks like this. Has a great image of the Rocketeer. We already showed you the spine. The back has his jetpack on it. And then let's open her up. This is a really beautiful collected edition. Even just like the book itself, the design and everything. The in papers here are just amazing. You just get all of this black and white line work of Dave Stevens with different images. It's almost like a montage, if you will, like a film montage of the story. And then the back has a different in papers here, and it also looks like a different film montage. I always like when the in papers are different on front and back. And it did come with a little leaflet inside because it was plastic wrapped, and I just like to keep those. Not as a bookmark in this thing, though, because this does come with a ribbon. Let me pull that out here if I can. It's all tight in there. Oh my gosh. The ribbon doesn't want to come out. All right, so there's the ribbon. So it's like a nice little bookmark for you. I always like when that's included. Again, just showing off the book here before I get into the story. But this is the first title page. You get a blown up panel of the Rocketeer character. And then all the credits for who worked on the book. And additional credits, because there were some people that jumped in and helped out with some of the artwork. But for Dave Stevens back in the day, including Jaime Hernandez of Love and Rockets fame. And you have Arthur Adams, Jeff Darrow, Michael Kaluta. I'm trying to see what other names that I recognize. Paul Chadwick. So some people did help out. But here's the dedication. It's for Dave, who always wanted to see this happen. And this was a revelation for me because this is written by Thomas Jane, the same Thomas Jane that portrayed the Punisher in the second live-action Punisher movie, if you count the Dolph Lundgren one as the first. And I didn't know Thomas Jane had his own publishing company, too. I didn't know he was that deep into comic books. And then also he worked on... he's a best friend of Dave Stevens. And he talks about in the introduction here how Dave Stevens always wished a collection of his stories could come together. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But here's The Rocketeer, The Complete Adventures, another title page with some more artwork. And it just dives into the story. And this was recolored by, I think it's Laura Martin, who's a great colorist. Laura Martin. Who's a great colorist, but I will say that there is like a modern touch to her colors for the story. And there are talks that this is how Dave Stevens wanted the book to look. He wanted it to be a little bit more polished than it was when he he did the coloring on the original printings of these stories, but I think he had an assist too. I forget who it was, but he wasn't doing it by himself. And I do wish it kind of had the original coloring, and I do wish this was kind of on matte paper because it is a glossy touch. But Laura Martin's an incredible colorist in her own right, and it doesn't take away from the story, but it is a more modern touch. So I just want to mention that for any purists out there. And we do get Bettie Page, who's a big part of this story as being the love interest of your hero character of Rocketeer. His name's also Cliff, under the mask, if you will. And then you get the cover here. This is one of the first covers we got of the Rock. Or no, this was the ad. This is the first ad. So this is the first appearance of the Rocketeer ever in a comic book. Was this advertisement that Dave Stevens put together? And then this was the back issue cover of the first issue that appeared in, because Rocketeer first appeared in the backup strips for Star Slayer, I believe it was, and for Pacific Comics. And I believe it was whoever the editor was of Pacific Comics. Let's see if I can get the name right here. The Star Slayer #2. And I can't see it, but whoever it was, the editor of that comic asked Dave Stevens if he could come up with a character in a comic strip that would fill in 6 pages for 2 issues. And this is what he came up with. This is what Dave Stevens came up with, was this Rocketeer character. And this is very much a love letter to pulp adventures of the 1930s and 40s. So you think of things like, I think the most mainstream example would be like Indiana Jones. So it's kind of like that, but even pulp heroes like the Phantom or the Shadow, any of those classic 30s, 40s adventure heroes. And there are some, he's like fighting Nazis and, typical of the pulp stories. But Cliff Secord, the main character here, isn't a straight good guy, do-gooder kind of hero. He starts off with some very egocentric morals, I guess, of wanting to stick out for his own self and whatnot. And then he comes across this jetpack. He's an airplane flyer that does like airplane shows. When back in the day, like air shows, like you fly planes and do tricks and do like tumbling routines and little skits and stuff. So that's what he did. But then he comes across this jetpack, and it helps him get out of a nasty situation. He thinks he first finds a jetpack and thinks he's gonna just that's gonna be his new gimmick in his air shows. But then he has to fight crime with it. And he finds out there's some spies, there's some double agents. There's a lot of twists and turns in this book that makes it really exciting as well. And it's all revolved around the technology of this jetpack. And then it's Bettie Page, his love interest, is wanting him to just give up the jetpack, and so they can live their life happily ever after in safety. But Cliff has a little bit of an ego, but also understands the importance of protecting the jetpack. So it's a lot of twists and turns, and just a rollicking, swashbuckling adventure in the pulp tradition. It's a lot of fun. And it includes the original series that was all collected, in, of course, across the different publishers, sometimes in backup strips of other comics, sometimes as their own single issues. So having it collected as one piece here is what Dave Stevens' dream was, and that's what Thomas Jane talks about in the introduction. So, excuse me. This is here, and unfortunately, this was eventually collected after Dave Stevens passed away, because he did pass away at a young age. So it's like, that's why the dedication is the book that he always wanted to see. And here's all the backup content. There's like so much, like this is all extra material in the back of the creation of this character, and a lot of extra ephemera and stuff like that. So that's what I'm talking about, is the book design and the historical document of this book is all really, really, it really is a complete collection. Here's some like airplane toys and stuff. Those like those flimsy foam airplanes, if anybody had those as kids. It's like a version for the Rocketeer. Oh. And then you have some other special features. This is one of the characters from my Pulp story that Dave Stevens says that was the inspiration for Rocketeer. Here's some handwritten scripts and character developments, like the pitch that Dave Stevens had for the Rocketeer character. And here's some thumbnails of him working out the character. And then the black and white line art of the first advertisement. And here's some other preliminary layouts. I'm not going to flip through everything here, but here is an example of the original coloring, which gives it like that more newsprint pulpy feel, which is what I liked about the original coloring better than Laura Martin's. But like I said, Laura Martin's aren't bad, but this I feel like fits more in line with the pulpy feel of the comic story. Here's another example of a scanned-in page for you, which it would have been kind of cool if they collected both versions too, like they did in like Absolute Killing Joke or Batman Year One Absolute. That would have been a cool idea. And here's some more artwork and thumbnails through here. This is I think it's a Jaime Hernandez worked on this page because Dave Stevens was known as being a kind of a slower artist, because he wasn't a long-time comic artist. Like, there's not a lot of comic art of Dave Stevens. He's more a graphic designer, illustrator, worked in a lot of advertisement, I believe. So he wasn't the fastest artist in comics, and you could tell by all the details and stuff he puts in his artwork. But this is Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets, who's one of my favorite artists ever, and the page that he helped out on, and a little paragraph of him helping out on it, which is really cool. Two different versions of that cover, some more thumbnails that he's working out. Here's a poster that's like it actually folds out into this cover. It's a famous poster of the Rocketeer and Bettie Page. I think there's two pull-out posters in here, or gatefold posters. Some more thumbnails. So this really is like, and Dave Stevens, I guess, kept all of this stuff, which is amazing, and I love that. Especially if you're an artist yourself and you want to kind of see like these process pages. And there's a lot of anecdotes from Dave Stevens himself on these that he kept intact. Here's a cool gatefold of the Rocketeer. Just an amazing like pulp poster. If you're into like sci-fi pulps and stuff, like this is definitely the best love letter to those that era. And here's a cool image. So you get like the kind of the thumbnail rough sketch of it, and then the penciled version and then the painted version of it there. Oh, even Dave Stevens doing some process photos. So you can see he was actually created the Rocketeer helmet and took that photo so that he could draw it from there, and then him even holding this phone to try to take images of him drawing himself. So that's Dave Stevens in those images, which is really cool. Some more advertisement photos for the Rocketeer. There's the back image, or the cover image that we saw on the front of the book. Like I said, I don't want to flip through everything here because I don't want to spoil all this great material for anybody that wants to buy this book. But it really is a complete collection. There's nothing in here that I feel like would be missing. I think the only thing I would add if they were to do another version of this would be the original colors. Would be cool. Here's all the different lettering for the Rocketeer that he was working out for the title. And then here's some more posters that he made up. This is like the Hughes Industries World's Fair poster that he also took inspiration from this for the Rocketeer character. The Rocketeer with the American flag. And then a little biography of Dave Stevens. So it really is a complete collection, and it's a beautiful book. If you're into pulp stories and pulp comics, I'd say definitely seek this out. This was by IDW Publishing, and it's still in print now, like this newest printing is. So definitely seek this out. Just totally a beautiful collection that I think any comic book fan should own. If you're into great comic book art, pulp stories, great adventure stories. And if you like the original movie was great too. It was directed by Joe Johnston, who directed the first Captain America, the first Avenger MCU movie, which has a lot of the same aesthetic. So thank you for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up if you like the content. Comment down below if you're a big Rocketeer fan or what your favorite pulp comics are. I'm always trying to seek out more pulp comics, and share the video with your friends. So thank you for watching. Read more comics.